or will the pushing and shoving begin? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 11 Challenge class, and you'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Lorenzo Bonder, and behind the scenes is our director, Ramiro Cisneros. Lorenzo, this is a track where I have to imagine it is going to be vitally important that they get a good qualifying in.
Absolutely. Qualifying determines everything in this race. If you're going to be on the top of the standings or at the bottom of this whole grid that we're going to have right here, especially with the pavement or the reshape of this Zandvoort that is now a faster Zandvoort, still slightly truncated, but a much faster Zandvoort than we had on the previous iteration.
You can see here the layout, which from above looks pretty close to how it was before, but as Lorenzo mentioned, they added quite a bit of banking in places. They tried to widen it where they could, and certainly added a bit of paved runoff in a couple spots where it needed it for modern F1 cars, but otherwise still the track that you may be used to seeing earlier on in iRacing, this new version having been added in just the last year or so. But that banking will definitely play a part, and we'll be talking about that quite a bit. What about the championship situation here at this point, about halfway into the season, Lorenzo?
Yeah, so Casey McDonald has been basically running the show. Every win he went in this series, bar Red Bull Ring, has been his way. If I remember correctly, he also had a podium at Red Bull Ring, so that would be his discard in terms of points. But other than that, Mehmet Karachai is trying to do his best, trying to go into the top of the fray. But I like this battle for the last step of the podium between Kevin Schultz, Nye, Trippett, and Polos as well, where this is basically a four-way fight, and you gotta love to see that.
Absolutely. Right now, they're in the midst of practice currently, so they'll be heading off into qualifying in just a second here. But everybody trying to get up to speed in what is quite an early morning race. It looks like it's going to be at about just before 7 a.m. virtual standard time out here on the Dutch coast. So don't quite have the bathers out on the beaches quite yet, I'm sure, but maybe a few early morning swimmers out in the ocean at this stage. So we talked about how this place makes it difficult to pass, but I do like what they've done with some of the banking to kind of help facilitate that, Lorenzo, because it makes this place extremely unique in terms of road courses.
It does. I think it is basically, nowadays I would say it's a road course that can kind of fit everything. Even if you try to talk, maybe F1 doesn't fit in. I think F1 kind of like fits in. It's a good strategy race, in my opinion. You're not going to see a whole lot of action in track, but strategy-wise, you got a lot of stuff. Same thing for GT cars. We're going to be driving here today. Basically, you can go for an undercut depending on the circumstances of finding yourself in really tough battles, Joe, that I've seen that in real life. You go for a pit stop 5 minutes before someone else does. The other guy is so truncated within battles. Your pace, just when you get out of the track, is just so much better that you open up a gap after the overtake. So it's good. It's a good race to watch for these reasons.
Now, if you're not familiar with this series, this is going to be a 40-minute race that they're running. It's in a fixed setup. They do actually have a spare car as well, so if they get damaged, they can get back out there and try to run. But they also have incident limits, and with that paved runoff that we talked about, could be easy to rack them up. Once they reach 17, they'll have a drive-through, and then every 5 after that, they'll get another drive-through. And then if they hit 25, unfortunately, they're going to be disqualified. And they have limited fuel, so we expect a pit stop in this event as well, since they can't make it to the end of it. But drivers obviously are eager to get onto the track, as I think race control is just giving one last chat to the drivers right now before we get racing here today. They've come through this much of the season. Now they just got to finish it out here, Lorenzo. I'm sure those who have kind of needed those drop weeks need to try and clean it up from here.
Yeah, and basically every race moving forward is a race that you cannot allow yourself to drop, because there are very key tracks. After that, we go like to Mugello, then we go to Daytona. So it's these are tracks that you need to basically get your strides right if you want to finish in a really good spot this season. If you're even, especially even if you're fighting for the championship, the guys I would say majorly in top five are where they cannot allow to lose any points whatsoever to Casey.
Looks like they're going to switch the session over now to qualifying. So we'll hopefully get you pictures of that shortly. And they have a limited qualifying here. It's only 3 laps, limited to within 10 minutes. So they can't really dilly-dally out there. They got to get one on the board and keep it clean. Because if you mess up one of them, well, then you've only got 2 more tries to try and get it up to speed and get it going. With it being so early, it's a bit cool. So I kind of wonder if we'll see the second or third lap be the quicker one, trying to get those tires up to temperature, Lorenzo.
Yeah, that's my thought actually, because I think most importantly, the new build came out, right? It just came yesterday. So because of that, it's like, how do you proceed with these new, tire treads? The new, there's not the new features. We've been preparing for that for ages, but is it still the same, like 2 slow out laps then 1 fast lap, or just 1 slow out lap and then 2 fast laps? Because over here I've seen drivers take these 2 fast laps and the second lap is actually much faster than the first. So how do they negotiate that? It's going to be an interesting one in a little bit.
Yeah, many of them on their out lap currently. So we don't have any times on the board at the moment. They'll try and see what we can do to show that to you in just a moment. But this 13-turn circuit has gone through a lot of history. Its current iteration definitely was not its original. It was honestly very, very fast. It was pretty much all the same from Tarzan up to Shivlak. And then it took a very wide, fast, sweeping run through the sandy dunes, along the coast, and back to the main straight, with what is now Arie Luyendyk being an even more open and faster final corner leading onto that main straight. I do kind of miss that old one. You can race it in Grand Prix Legends, and perhaps I'm sure some other sims that may have mods made of the old version. But this one on iRacing is much slower, much more technical, but definitely more suited to create a challenge for these modern vehicles out there today, and probably a lot safer, thankfully.
Yeah, of course, all these revamping of the track, right? I think we can call revamp of the track, because the layout hasn't changed much. It's just like maybe the groove going to Hogenholzbach, then, which is turn number 3, and then Arie Luyendyk Bocht, which is like the last corner, where they made more of a NASCAR-esque or a steep bank corner where you can fit the cars and be more safe, allow a little bit of a runoff. So it makes racing much more dynamic. And of course, I think for the last corner, in my opinion, I don't know yours, Joe, it makes just things better. It also lives up to the hype of Arie Luyendyk, because that man was fast when he was actually in IndyCar. So I think it does its justice the last corner nowadays.
Yeah, Luyendyk was extremely fast. I think he still holds the record for the fastest qualifying lap ever, or fastest pole lap, I think it was,
Yes.
at Indianapolis. So that's why they've paid homage to the Dutchman here and given him a corner named after. I'm with you. I love the new last banked corner because it's definitely allows the racing to be a lot more side by side coming down that main straight, and like I said, makes it just more interesting and unique overall. So, as it looks like we've now got some times on the board, Schultz currently holds the pole position, and by a pretty decent margin, it looks like, Lorenzo, almost 0.4 of a second over Karachai.
That is interesting. Of course, there's still some job that needs to be done by Karachai. I think he can find that pace, but the good thing is, like, if you're even 0.4 of a second in the race, you're gonna have a little bit of advantage coming through as race hole goes on by, and you can basically set yourself for a really good run. I wouldn't say like I'm looking at the top, like maybe top 15. It's a good place for you to be in the track, given the grid that we have nowadays here at and in this series. But in general, top 10, you can basically fight for something in terms of strategies and fights around the track. This is actually a track that it's very underrated. For open wheels, it's hard for you to pass, but GTs, I think the racing is a little bit closer because you can actually just take advantage on the errors of the other drivers way too much.
Yeah, and you're not so succumbing to the arrow wake that the open wheelers tend to try and be so sensitive to, as we see some of our cars out on track now in qualifying. This is, remember, Karachai, who's taken the pole back away by half a second over Kevin Schultz. He has responded big time. It looks like Kevin was not able to go quicker on his second lap. Obviously, Mehmet has. Jeremy Main also doing a great job, jumping up into third with his 34.8. Just needs a little under 2/10 to try and catch Kevin and put himself onto the front row.
Yeah. Also, one big thing is the big spread right between Karachai and all the way down to Donald Green, because you said this track is extremely technical, has a lot of places that you can actually make a really big mistake, and does actually allow people to have this big spread of time throughout the board. I think Main just did a lap that is 7/10 slower than Karachai from what it looks like as we look towards Kevin Schultz come to the final four corners of this track.
Yep, down into the Hans Ernst chicane here. Let's see what he can do out of really what's going to be the last true corner. And he balks, unfortunately, coming out of the chicane and down into Kumho here. He needs a very good exit to get some of this time back, or else he is not going to be on pole. In fact, I don't show him as improving his time at this stage. So I think Karachai is going to sit safe, at least compared to the number 3. He'll cross the line, and Schultz's lap gets deleted. So that one won't even count. Karachai also had his last lap deleted, so he was also pushing just that little bit too hard. But the good news for them, Lorenzo, is that Main was not able to topple them.
No, he was not, and that makes the life out of Karachai and Schultz a little bit more relaxed. Is just see how the other drivers will come up and behave around the track. Here, Jose Souza coming into the final 2 corners into Ari Ludendijk. The question is, does he got an off-track lap? Looks kind of solid. I don't think he's going to be at the top of the board, but it's going to be close to a really good time on the top of the board.
Glad I have someone who's got better Spanish, so can actually say some of these more Spanish names better. He does improve, but Jose still stays in 6th position, so that'll put him onto the 3rd row. Ed Trippett in the 444, currently sitting in 7th, actually has completed all 3 of his laps, so it looks like he's not going to be able to improve from here. I'm checking to see if there is anybody else out there. And it doesn't look like we've got any other drivers with a lap left. So while we may have 2 minutes, it looks like qualifying is essentially over.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of drivers will make any improvements. Maybe Trippett might be the only one that will make an improvement, and if so, from the actual pace. Looking at the sector times, it's not going to be a massive improvement. I don't think it's going to propel him at the top of the board, near probably not even top 3. The question, I think he might be close to Airbesh, so that might be maybe his real chance to get within top 5 and get a better spot into this race.
Well, they're both done with qualifying. Nobody can set a time from here. So, Poulos and Trippett are basically going to come in and park it in pit lane. Good to practice that, though. I've seen that little chicane on the pit entry catch out a number of drivers over the years.
Oh, absolutely. He's one of the good drivers around in this track, and like you said, I think that corner that you have on the pit entry is one of the most established corners you have in maybe racing, because you're coming in so slow. Nowadays 80 kilometers, but you have to stop the car right away. It is, this pit entry reminds me of Fuji of sorts. But Fuji has more leeway. Here you have no leeway whatsoever for you to make into the pit entry.
Yeah, they've got the Hugenholtz hairpin literally right behind it, so they can't change that chicane and give it like some more room on the outside with the wall or anything. It's basically is what it is, but they need it there to slow the cars down on their way into there. As we said, qualifying is over now, so we wait for the clock to tick down to zero so that we can get to our starting grid here for our most recent event in Series 11. This storied league here, PCA Sim Racing, basically came about because of the pandemic and has stuck around and become extremely popular. Here is your starting grid. Mehmet Karaçay on the pole position over Kevin Schultz by a pretty good margin. Sees Jeremy Main starting from third. Then you've got George Poulos in P4. Row 3 has Neil Urbesh starting in fifth and Jose Souza in the sixth position. After that, Edward Trippett will be starting from seventh. To his outside, it is Henry Rogers, P8, and Dave Douglas in ninth. Aubrey Ayer will be starting P10, and then row 6 sees Jack Stevenson in 11th and Robert Galais in 12th. Lorenzo?
Yeah, so we got George Poulos, Chris Schosler, Arthur Schwartz, and Casey McDonald. Apparently, some drivers did not take some laps from what it looks like based on qualifying, Joe. So looking forward to see how the grid will slot when we get to green for life.
18 drivers taking part in this race. A bit of a smaller field here in Challenge Class. It's been that way for much of Series 11. Just wait till we get to tomorrow night. It's a big field there for that one. And as they come around Ari Leyendijk, you can see they are raring to go with all the various multicolored cars, eager to let this sun glint off the roof. Pace car going to duck on in any moment now, and Karaçay will have control of the field. Can he hold back Kevin Schultz on his way into Tarzan? Waiting patiently for the green flag. There it is. Green flag is out. Karaçay gets a decent start, but Schultz is going to keep him honest as they stay wheel to wheel up into the opening hairpin. A lot of banking here, so outside can sometimes do it, but Kevin can't manage to hold on as they remain side by side almost down through the entire rest of the field.
Yeah, and apparently Main actually was able to retain the position from Polos coming into turn number 2. There was a potential move from Polos right after that because he actually gained some ground, but while Black at the number 55 he's retained third place, and everybody just now into a single file line.
Yep, no wonder everybody's getting single file, because as they come up to Shevlock, this is not a corner you want to be trying to fight side by side through. As they all weave through, Karaçay still leads over Schultz. Main in third, but he's being hounded by Poulos after he denied him taking that position early in the race. They do want to try and get settled in. This series takes it very seriously on drivers being clean on the first lap. So it's actually surprisingly rare that you see big problems. But that time for George, he can't get the traction down. Here comes comes Poulos.
Yeah, Poulos makes the overtake on the inside, makes his take, and I think Main doesn't want to fight weight that much. Apparently, the traction control just played the tricks on the number 55. Is Souza. Yeah, a little bit of an issue.
Apologies, that was Main that broke traction there coming out of turn 10. And Poulos, who took advantage of it, now is trying to run away. But speaking of running away, look at this gap between P1 and P2. Karaçay over Schultz by almost 1.2 seconds after a single lap. We got a little bit of a battle behind them as Trippett is trying to defend from Ayer. Looks like Ayer's not able to take it, but up in front of them, suddenly going wide, that's Henry Rogers.
Yeah, Rogers apparently moving up in the front right there. Trippett, followed by Dave Douglas and Trippett. And this is the interesting thing now. You can see a little bit of a contact from what it looks like. Ayer just making a bump-to-bump contact with the number 444, and everybody just keeping one abreast. So you can see the gaps between Aubrey Ayer and Tripper. About half a second separates these guys, but interesting to see the lines coming into turn number 3. Some people will take it to the inside, where more people will take to the outside line, where it's basically the formula line.
And look at how much they're having to try and take different lines here, coming through the back and forth hairpins of the infield. as Main's not done with his woes. He got passed by Poulos, but Souza's already trying to see if he can shake him, as well as Neil Urbesh back there in 6th position. Very much a 4-car train forming.
Yeah, and now some of the things that we can talk about over here in this race, Zandvoort could be a perfect example of that, because we've been on a calendar that has been highly some truncated tracks, right? But this is like the most truncated of all of them, maybe more so than Virginia. We've been into tracks that fuel saving is a little bit more tricky, like Spa-Francorchamps, Red Bull Ring, and Road America. So I think this is the first track where you can actually truly think about fuel saving and have a really good over stint and go for maybe an overcut.
Big look from Souza coming up into Gerlach, but can't quite get there. Main's going to fend him off, but he goes low, and you want to be high through that progressively banked corner. He doesn't lose the position behind him. It does look like Urbesh maybe slipped up a little bit as he drops a few car lengths.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Brazilian looks like is gaining some ground, just trying to find a little bit of overtake that has a little quite of a wiggle. Going to Shiviak, and outside of it, managed to make it stick and keep it on the track. Now going to Masters, and eventually into Bach as well. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how the Brazilian can move forward. As Rogers have an issue.
Yeah, I saw him in the background, and we've also got another car, it looks like, spun off there. This is Rogers, and unfortunately, Galais also finding himself caught up in it. I think that was from Rogers bouncing back onto the track. I wonder if there's going to be a penalty for that one. So here's Henry coming through Shevelock, and we talked about the difficulty of Masters. This is such a swift corner. Oh, we got the curb.
And the rejoin doesn't help either.
It did not at all. I think that's where he eventually got hit. You can see the front of the car missing. So he must have kind of got swiped there across the front by Galais as Kevin Schultz continues to lead. Oh, what happened to Karachai? Was that Karachai that we saw spun?
Yeah, we saw spun at CF Kumbach.
Oh my goodness. So we were so focused on Henry. I had seen that car. I didn't make the connection that was the number 78 that we saw off track. He falls down to 12th position. Schultz now leads by about a second and a half. He's got a comfortable margin over Poulos in these early stages. He's got to try and hold on to that, at least until the pit stops, because he could be jumped by George if he takes things a little too lightly through those pit stop sequence. Regardless, we're going to focus in the meantime on Jose Souza, now sandwiched between the likes of Urbesh and Main.
Yeah, and the thing is, Main is not looking pretty good with that car with a launch, and there's a contact between Urbesh and Souza.
Unfortunate to see. So they'll both get back on track, but again, losing multiple positions. Here's a look at that replay. Hopefully we can get another look at our leader spinning out at some point. And yeah, just chopped down. Didn't expect that car to try and dive in at the last second. I can report that Henry Rogers did get a black flag for the unsafe rejoin there. So he'll have to go and serve that one. And it's probably too early that he can try and combine that with his pit stop, which would still hold him longer anyways. But now he's got to visit twice.
Yeah, which is going to be a little bit interesting. I saw, from what it looked like, Schultz coming into or being close to the pit lane entry, but that wasn't the case. Of course, why would he take a pit lane when the cars are limited to 50%? So it makes no sense. As Ayer has a look on the inside on turn number 2, but cannot make the move stick on Urbesh. I think Urbesh is due to have a black flag for the contact he had with Souza.
And coming back to Dave Douglas, he gets promoted to 4th after that little mistake from our leader. So I'm sure he appreciates that, but he needs 6.5 seconds to catch up to Jeremy Main. Top 3 have really scampered away from everybody else. It used to be the top 4, I guess, but it looks like the pace at the front of the field is really something else. As we take a quick glance at Dave Douglas's camera, but we'll try and go back to that in a little bit. He does have Trippett behind him. That's about 1.7 seconds, so not under direct threat right now. There we go. Now we can see how he handles things.
Interesting. One hand on the wheel on the hairpins.
Well, must feel confident. Maybe he doesn't have that force feedback cranked up. So he seems to handle it decently as we're going to hop on board, flying through Ari Leyendyke, now onto the main straight, and this thing is narrow coming along here. Basically, almost kind of like Indianapolis, appropriately, down into that first turn. It is quite a canyon.
It's funny how the cars are actually sticking to that inside line. I know if I remember correctly, F1 cars also take that line a little bit more wide angle, don't they? It's back in the old days, you'd actually approach like they normally would, like a complete hairpin, attack the hairpin, stick around on the apex, and then leave it nowadays. But now the outside line, because I think they reduced the banking, has a little bit more grip when you come out of the corner, and you can actually be more fast outside of it than in it. So it's those small grooves that made, I think, this track more dynamic and interesting for all cars.
Looks like Urbesh was given a black flag for the contact that he had, so he's in serving that right now. We're getting about to where drivers could potentially pit here, but we don't expect many of them to pit in since the undercut is not as good in these cars typically. We expect most of them to try to go as long as they can. We're still watching Kevin Schultz up at the front of the field. Has got it back up to about 1.5 seconds. It was down to 1.1 briefly. So it looks like he's managing this one as George Poulos continues to try and chase him.
And what I like is the fact that Schultz is not breaking away by that much, right? Poulos is keeping him very honest, even though Schultz just has the best lap of the race by a long mile, whilst you can see Souza trying to fend out from Iyer, and behind him is Karachai on a recovery run on the inside.
Yeah, in fact, he's going to get that spot over Stevenson. So Karachai back up into 8th place. How quickly can he manage these overtakes now that he's got a couple more lined up in front of him? Iyer, the next up. They're all going to stay up to the high side, trying to cut down a little bit on the exit to straight line it as much as they can, despite a look coming up over Hunsrück. Karachai cannot get the overlap that he needs.
No, not yet. And he's going to have to remain calm and ride the draft, ride that bumper that Iyer has in front of you. Even though Karachai's pace, I think it's on general terms, might be the only one close to Schultz in terms of true pace of being the fastest around the track. So the number 78 on a mission right here, because he needs all the points he can have. Because we know for one thing, Joe, this is Casey McDonald's drop point. So for now in the season, he's the DNS. So what can you do to do better in this race where your consistency around the championship isn't as best as McDonald is?
Yeah, you make a good point on that. He really needs to try and capitalize on his rival not attending today. Meanwhile, battle for 10th between Schuessler, Eskridge, and Green. Lisa doing all she can to try and see if she can shake Chris out of the racing line as they head through the banking of Leyendyke. She's going to get a nice tow. We're looking back from Iyer now, though, and that was a pit stop from Karachai, I think. Yes, he heads into pit lane. That might be our first taker for a scheduled stop.
Wouldn't surprise me if someone went for the undercut.
I mean, he's got nothing to lose to try something a little bit different. We got a replay of Lisa trying to make a pass as a defense from, I think that's Schuessler in front of her. Goes around the outside. Can she get it done? No, just a little bit too hot. Thankfully, it looks like she's able to rejoin the track, but she loses a position instead of gaining one.
Yeah, I wonder if actually there was something around the fact that the car in front made a slight move under braking and caught Lisa off guard, and she had to take avoiding actions or evasive actions to avoid contact with the car in front. That could be a factor to why she actually just went off into turn number 1.
So it looks like Karachai in and out. Didn't take a free repair. I don't think he hit anything when he spun, so he's good on that. However, Robert Galais did take his free repair because of his contact, and I'm kind of curious if that is going to take him to the end. He pitted about 3 laps ago. That may have been just a tad too early, if I'm honest, but we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Poulos there on screen, now 2 seconds behind the leader. Back to Schuessler once again. It's no longer Lisa behind him. Now it's Donald Green.
And Green kind of quiet in this race, but making good strides into the top 10. And probably, if I'm not mistaken, just taking a quick look right here in the standings so far, Joe. But this might be one of Green's best results so far in this championship. Best result was actually in the last race where he capped 14 points. So every point he can get right now to get inside that top 10 is well earned.
Interesting how the others, it looked like both Schuessler and Lisa were trying to go low through Hugenholtz, but taking the more traditional high line there. Green was just using that progressive banking. They almost managed to snag one over on him. Henry Rogers now taking what I assume is his scheduled stop. He's already served his penalty. So this should be him just in to try and get the fresh fuel and get back out and on his way. We don't expect tires on any of these cars since it is such a short race. And no, Rogers actually just retired the car, or I thought he did. He disappeared. Now he's back. Maybe I spoke too soon.
These guys praying, doing pranks on the commentators already this early on in the race. Season 2 barely started. We haven't even started season 2 yet, and they're giving us our heart attacks already.
Yeah. So it looks like he's back out. So yeah, that was a connection problem. Apologies. Thought maybe he was going to quit this one early. Not happy with how things were going. Dave Douglas looks calm though. Still running in 4th, but he continues to bleed time to the front group. Remember, it was it 6.5 seconds before Lorenzo? It's 12.5 now.
Gee. Talk about a gap opened up with half of a race already.
It's not looking good for Dave, but as we've seen, mistakes can be made. If he keeps it on the black stuff, he could still have a shot at promoting himself up on the podium. So I'd say stick with it. So we hop on with Jeremy Main down through Masters, coming through turn 9, and still chasing on George Poulos. That has remained much closer than Dave Douglas has. Still about a second and a half. You can see George just up the road here as they now head down to the Hans Ernst chicane. And am I seeing right? Yeah, Neil Urbesh also now getting a black flag.
Yeah, for the contact with Jose Souza on the hairpin.
Oh, that's an old one. Excuse me. I forgot that was up there. I thought that was a new message. So apologies for that. Still watching the 55 of Jeremy Main, sitting in that 3rd spot where he started this race. Ahead of him, Poulos, remember, he started 4th and looking at a 2nd. That is a very good run for him.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really good run so far. And now eyes back to Douglas. One thing that we're probably going to look in terms of battles around the track real soon is actually might be Trippett and Souza. The gap is winding down a little bit, but it's not by much. But I don't know if we're going to see that battle begin before the pit lanes and the pit stops begin in this race. Actually, they begun, but when they come to the pit stop, I mean.
Yeah, when we see the majority of the field pit in. I think Karachai is still our only driver that I'm pretty sure is... Oh, no. Well, Henry Rogers has taken his actual stop as well. But he's way down there. Karachai is trying to recover and come back from an early mistake and do something a little bit different from everybody else. As we watch Souza back here in 6th spot. And he also got turned a little bit, so has lost some time. Aubrey Ayer is the one behind him, but he's got 4 seconds to try and catch up. That is not for position. That's Robert Galais just in front of Aubrey right now.
Yeah, and I think Galais is one of these guys that was actually the one that got involved with Rogers. When Rogers came back into the track, and I think Galais just had a massive damage on the car and had to limp it back to the pit lane. So that's why both of these guys are a lap down. Now looking for a battle for 8th place. Jack Stevenson trying to fend off the pace that Scheusler has been putting up. Really good pace from the number 61, and with as a consequence, both the number 71 and number 10 following suit. And we know that Eskridge is looking to make strides after the issue that she had on the off track at turn number 1.
Exactly. So as they come around onto the main straight, Stevenson's going to lead this group. He'll give a tow to Scheusler. Don't think he's close enough at this stage because it's still a number of car lengths between them, although he kind of pokes his nose out. Up in front of them, that was Aubrey Iyer going, that was lapping Delace there. So that's why Aubrey was going wide up through the first turn as we turn our attention back to Stevenson, Scheusler, Green, and Eskridge once again. They've been glued nose to tail for much of this time. Scheusler still trying to make that bottom lane work, and to his credit, he's staying ahead of Green, but again, most people seem to run the high line through there.
Yeah, because it is the better line. It's the line that you naturally you have more grip on the entry and an exit. You don't lose pace and you don't lose rhythm when you come out of the corner. But Scheusler just managed to avoid the traction control, just tapped the car on track, found the traction to get out of the corner and basically go flat out. And what might help him a little bit is the fact that he's running a Golf-esque teal and orange livery, so it might give him a few tenths of a second per there.
Is that why so many drivers run that livery? They're looking for those extra few tenths. As Ed Trippett, we're checking in on in 5th position. Souza has gained a lot of time on him and is looking hungry to try and make the pass here. In fact, I think he's going to have a good shot down into Tarzan if he so wishes, but he didn't get a good exit off the banking for some reason. That's a bit strange. Not sure. Yeah, he's not there, and he can't make the pass. I thought for sure that was on.
I don't know if he lifted off the gas. I wish I could have listened to the engine and see if that was actually a thing. Of not playing aggressive, and I think also the fact that Trippett might have some connection issues might set back going to make that overtake.
Yeah, that could have scared him off a little bit here. I mean, who isn't scared of a car looking like it's made completely of denim as well?
Yeah, true. Not gonna disagree with that. Even though I cannot talk about denim and things like that. I love denim. But do you believe I never had Wrangler's denim?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on where you're from, because I'm sure it's more common in some places than others.
Oh.
So that may have been intentional there from Trippett. He got a warning from the stewards while we were talking for his connection. They do try to hold high standards here in PCA, and if they see your car blinking, you get a warning, and then if it continues, they'll actually park you. So perhaps they had told him to let Souza by, so since he was showing some signs of his internet being a little bit foul today.
Yeah, but also looking at that while we're still going back to Iyer, trying to break away from Stevens. Stevens actually gained a little bit of ground, on Iyer. The fact is you have Galay right in front, just kind of like blocking the path, or giving a little bit of tow to number 116. And now he just lets them both by. No, he doesn't for the time being. Souza's not far behind Douglas, as look on the inside by Scheusler.
Stevenson holds him off. Galais is going to pull over. He could be a bit of a thorn in their side here, because this is one of the more technical portions. They'll all work their way around through Hugendholz, all of them going to the bottom of the racetrack again. And Galais still not letting them by. Now it looks like he's lifting, and Stevenson sneaks through. That was close, though, for Scheusler. And he'll get up to the back of Stevenson. I don't know how. I thought for sure he was going to get turned in that one.
I also thought that was going to happen. I was nearly sure like a big one was going to happen. Thankfully, the gods of air and the Sim Racing Jesus were on their side.
As they work their way around through the left-hander onto the back stretch now. This is one of the few long straights, really, the cars have to try and stretch their legs into a heavy braking zone. Sometimes there are passes into this chicane, but they are tricky. At 61 of Chris Scheusler, still trying to see if he can threaten him. Poulos, who we're watching currently, I think is coming upon traffic. Yeah, that's Neil Urbesh that's separating himself from the leader at this stage. Yeah. And that is the leader of Schultz, about 2.5 seconds up the road.
Yeah, from what it looks like, he's just separated by Arthur Schwartz and Urbesh that are in front of him. And that's an actual battle for position. There goes Urbesh on the inside. I think he's going to make the move stick on the 82. There you go. Urbesh one spot up. Now goes the number 192 on the outside to make that overlap.
Art Schwartz trying to stay out of the way
of
these
inside.
Battling cars. That was very close between himself and Poulos, and now he is through. Sounds like I think I heard, Dave Douglas just announced that he's going to be pitting in this time. He was making sure that Souza was aware. I'm guessing because he didn't want him trying to follow in his slipstream and plow into him on the main straight.
Yeah, not only that, but they're coming in very close to the entry of the pit lane. So one coming in and starting to brake on the entry of the pit lane itself, and it's an 80-kilometer pit lane. You just might catch someone off guard, so it makes sense for Douglas to, let by the other drivers and warn them that he's coming into his service.
Out and around through Kumho. This is where the pit entry will happen here. From the final turn, he stays off to the side, and Souza not even going to try and play any games of picking up that slipstream. We'll just let him go, as Dave Douglas is now going to be the most recent to have taken a scheduled stop. I see Lisa Eskridge has been in and out for about 8 seconds. I think that might be enough. That's a bit of a quick pit stop, but this is definitely far enough in that she could get to the end from here. Meanwhile, I also see Aubrey Iyer pitting in. So we're finally seeing drivers affect their strategy, and Dave Douglas is going to be returning in what appears to be about 10th position.
And just taking a quick over here on Douglas, his best race so far in this season was a top 10, so was actually at 10th place. Therefore, he's actually being able to do his best result in this championship in this series so far. So that is really good for the number 43 driver. That is a confidence boost with 2 races to go after this.
Yeah, I have to say I'm impressed. He's been running a very comfortable race when he had some pressure from Jose. He didn't buckle under that. Now he's kind of on his own, so maybe he can focus on his own race without having that yellow and blue car just behind him. In the meantime, it looks like, that is Maine just behind Poulos now. So Jeremy becoming a bit of a threat to that 192 for second place.
Yeah, what happened, I think we can kind of like blame a little bit on, I don't know if that was Ayers or another back marker that was one in front of them. Maybe, I think it could have been Urbesh that might be on their side, even though Maine got a lot of ground coming into outside of number 4. Now all the way to these S's in turn number 7 with Shivlak. So good battle on our hands prior to the pit stop.
Coming down into Masters, you're right, that is Urbesh in front of them, a lapped car, and he's not giving way, but don't think he's close enough that he's costing Poulos time, at least right now. Jack Stevenson pits in the meantime, so takes his service. Looks like Donald Green also pitting in. Still need the top 6 cars to come and take their service before everybody is through, but we've got maybe about 3 to 4 more minutes before drivers will probably be close to the end of that pit window.
Yeah, roughly. Unless you're a master in saving fuel and you go over the 10-minute mark and you have one more lap in store, because like I said, this is a truncated track. You don't waste a lot of fuel like you would do in other tracks in this season. And also, I think it might be the shortest track from the top of my head in PCA Challenge. Yeah, Red Bull Ring might be the close one in terms of distance, but Zandvoort might have to be.
I think Zandvoort is shorter, but yeah, Red Bull Ring probably has a faster lap just because of so many straights on that circuit. Kevin Schultz still hasn't stopped in. He carries on in that number 3. May have kind of inherited the lead a little bit, but man, once he was given that, once it fell into his lap, he picked it up and he is running. In fact, I'm sure Jeremy Main probably wishes he was a little bit closer. Try and threaten. He's awful close to the back of Neil Urbesh, who's been overtaken by Poulos. With that little bit of a buffer for George, that will keep him safe for now. And Jeremy's got to try and overtake as quick as he can so that he remains a problem for that number 192.
And Urbesh not making that overlap easy, even though you got a blue flag, you have to keep it, predictable. You just cannot, tap the brake, go to the side, and let everyone else by you, or those who are right behind you by you just that easily, and just because you feel threatened to lose a spot. So if I'm Main after this might be a good chance for you to do your pit stop.
Oh, good call. There you go. Main is actually taking his pit stop right now. So excellent strategy call there, Lorenzo, as he'll come and take fuel. Interesting. Actually, this is where we need to watch because Karachai has already pitted, and I think it's going to be close on if he is behind Main when he's done. There's Main hitting his marks, doesn't overshoot it. He's going to fill up with fuel. Karachai's just coming out of the chicane, the Hans Ernst chicane. So he's got to hustle. Might not be as close as I feared. Yeah, no, Main's already on his way. So I think Karachai still has some work to do to get onto the podium.
Oh, he has a lot of work to do. I would say right now the current gap might be over 20 seconds. Actually, even more than that. It's 35 seconds that separates nearly... 8 seconds separate Main to Karachai. I'm just going crazy anyway. So the job is done by Karachai, and props to him, had that spin early on in the race, and just by pure pace and patience, just was able to do the overtakes necessary, and the strategy just worked out his way once he came in after the spin.
And you know what? I'm starting to think he did make the right call, because I was just looking at the fastest lap, and that 78 car has the fastest lap right now. So him being in that clear air has helped tremendously, but not enough. You're right. It's under 8 seconds now. I think it's come down just a bit to Jeremy Main, but I'm not sure that he's going to be able to get on the podium with less than 10 minutes to go now. Finally, our leader, Kevin Schultz, brings that dark green car down to his pit stall.
Also, Polis as well, not far behind. And I think Polis has a little bit of an issue into the stall. It had to go a bit forward. And Schultz with a very, very stop coming out of the pit in the lane as well. 9.5 or 9.2 was the total time for Schultz. Meanwhile, Polis half a second slower.
And Karachai was 11.5, so he definitely lost time to Kevin in the pit stop sequence, at least. But they'll get back out on track, and that is everybody now. So if anybody's going to make a pass, they're going to have to do it on the circuit and not through strategy. I think the stewards just gave a warning to Donald Green as well for connection issues. So that allowed Jack Stevenson by. So Donald Green and number 71 having a bit of a blinking problem as we check in with Stevenson. Now that he's moved up to 11th, he's got 8 seconds to Schussler, so that's a bit too much.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit complicated. Now, the question is, I'm looking at this gap between Main and Karachai fall down. I'm just trying to do head mathematics right here. 15.5 to 21.9 and 22 now. Right now, gap 7 seconds. We'll give and take how many laps we have in this race. About
is that 6, I think?
5 or 6. So if we have 5 or 6, you can, if you're on your pace and hitting your strats in March, I would say 6-7 tenths of a second, you can work with something right here. If especially if Maines has a little bit of a blunder coming out of one of the corners, and the gap just shrinks fast.
Yeah, we're waiting for Jeremy Main's lap here, a first full lap after his pit stop, to try and see what his pace is. He'll cross the line now, and it's going to be a 1:36.0. Karachai, this time across, is probably going to be quicker based on his previous laps. 35.8. That was actually slow for Karachai because he was doing 35.2s and 35.4s. But the point remains, he is gaining. He's chopping away. The question is whether or not he's got enough time.
Yeah, that will be the true question in this race. While Roger has a little bit of an issue, I think Airbash coming in closer, and I don't know if Roger's also lost a position. Donald Green, therefore, the number 18 coming into a moment as we look to Airbash and see what happened to him.
That curb at Masters once again, very, very similar to what Rogers did, ironically. And that's going to give Rogers 13th place. I mean, that's honestly very little consolation to Henry because he's down 5 from where he gridded up today. This is a day to forget. Schultz is going to remember this one, no doubt, if he can just wrap this up in the last few laps, and he's pushing, taking it all the way out to the edge of the curbs.
Yeah, Schultz just on a very, very, easy drive after he started the race on pole. He never looked back, if you think about it, right, Joe? He had a few moments where he could have been within contention of defending his position to Karachai, maybe to Main, maybe to Polos. Souza could have been threat as well, as we see the total gap between the leader and also the gaps relative to the other driver behind you, in front of you. So there's still some race to be talked about, especially with that gap from Karachai lower than 5 seconds, 0.47 separates the number 55 to the number 78.
Yeah, a 1.5 second difference last lap between Main and Karachai. So Mehmet has got a fire lit under him. He's trying his best. I mean, if he keeps doing 1.5 seconds per lap, then yes, he could be up to Jeremy in time. But it almost depends on him being able to have that sort of pace advantage every single lap to the finish. Checking in on Trippett in the meantime in the 444. And he's within about 2 seconds of Douglas, but he needs quite a bit of oof to catch up to Dave and see if he can make that pass. Although Dave, I think, just went a little bit wide. And yeah, he lost 0.7 of a second right in that corner exit there.
Yeah, just about number 3. I think he got early outside of the corner and does lose the gap and allowing the 54 to win and put some heavy pressure with, I would say, 3-4 laps to go into this race.
A little bit more of that, and maybe Ed could actually get this spot. Yeah, he's cut it down now to about 0.7 of a second. Does Dave have the wherewithal to prevent Edward from taking him right at the very end of this race? Less than 5 minutes left to go on the clock, so it's coming down to it. Karachai rounds the corner. Let's see what the lap difference is this time. 36.0, that's much faster from Main. Karachai, 35.8. Oh, they are very back and forth on this. They seem to kind of be fast in spurts.
Yeah. It's like, I think when Main doesn't do a blunder or something like that, and Karachai is like not over attacking the curbs and getting the grip out of the corners, he's actually able to close the gap. Now, you just saw him right now, Joe, having a little bit of an issue coming into turn number 3 because this car just went squiggly outside of number 2 just because he was on full attack mode.
Down through Masters once again. Main knows that he's got to keep it steady. He's got to put the laps in here. He's got a potential podium on his hands as long as he doesn't buckle if Karachai manages to catch up to him in the last little bit of it. As we head down the backstretch one more time into what is kind of a stadium section. That's the other thing that happened when they updated this track is these temporary stands just flood either side, and it is a sea of orange when F1 comes to town.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, is an estimated of 150,000 or something like that when it's at that stadium section. So it's just pure insanity to think about it. 150,000 people all in orange and cheering for one singular driver.
Yeah, just unbelievable. They love Max Verstappen, that is for sure. As George Poulos has no thoughts of that right now. He's just focusing on the track and is still running a very solid second place, unfazed by anybody else around him. We're checking out Dave Douglas in the number 42, who's got Trippett still within about 9/10 of a second. Not quite close enough. As much time as Ed made up in those last few laps, looks like it's stalled out now.
Yeah, and he has 2 laps to go to try to make that overtake work. Regardless for Dave Douglas, I think this is going to be the best result he's going to have here at PCA in this series so far. So either he's going to get 15 points or 14 points, either 6 or 7. So is all the points he's getting right now are going to be welcome in the battle for the top 5, even top 10 itself, where he's just right now standing in front of me with 30 points on the board.
Well, we are less than a lap time on the board. That means that next time Schultz crosses the line, he'll get the white flag, which is actually right now as he comes down to the inside and our dual Barneys waves that white flag at him. He has a handy gap of about 6.5 seconds with this final circulation to go around. All he has to do is just keep it between the white lines.
Yeah, don't over-rotate the car, don't overdrive the car, and you come out with a victory. And for Schultz in this championship is going to be vital because he's fighting for that top 3, and he's fighting head-to-toe with Karachai, even though Karachai stands 12 points in front of him, and Schultz has a DNS. And his drop points will be Road America since he has a DNS, so he needs all the points he can get and ensure the Karachai does not have a top result.
Coming down out of Masters into that curved braking zone at 9. I always thought that one was quite tricky, but he handles it with aplomb, and that number 3 machine just been unfazed all race. Hasn't really been threatened since the start. He pulled out a gap of about a second in that first lap around, and then nobody seemed able to touch him. He'll break down into the Hans Ernst chicane, and only one more real actual corner to go before he can just put his foot down and accelerate all the way to the finish line through Kumho and now into the banking of Lyondike. Kevin Schultz has put on a perfect race today in the challenge class to take victory at Zandvoort. Behind him, Poulos going to be about 6 seconds behind with a handy second place. Maine was not caught by Karachai. Looks like Mehmet wound up about 2.5 seconds shy on that one. A little bit more consistency, and I think we would have had a race to the finish. But it was not meant to be the 55 with a well-earned podium today. And from there, we've got a few more cars trying to get into the finish, as I think Douglas and Trippett have got a fight on their hands. The 444 is right on the heels of Dave Douglas. There it is now on your screens, and it's a very good run from Ed. He could snipe it at the line if he's got enough. He goes up to the outside, but there's not quite enough momentum. They're going to cross the line, and what is the gap between them at the end? Whew, just 0.06 of a second. A little bit of nerves there from Dave, I think, as he kind of drummed his fingers, and now he pumps his fist. The hype, as he knows he managed to get a handy 6th place.
Yeah, not only is a handy 6th place, like I said, best result in this series so far. So take a bow, Dave Douglas. That was well earned, and surely will propel him probably deeper into the top 10.
So let's go through our finishing results. As we mentioned, Kevin Schultz taking the win here today over George Poulos by about 6.5 seconds after all was said and done. Jeremy Main finished P3 as Mehmet Karachai is going to be ruining his mistake from the lead where he lost a potential win and didn't even get on the podium. Came home 4th. Souza was 5th. as Dave Douglas fends off a charging Trippett for 6th, Trippett in 7th, and then Eskridge gets 8th place with a hard charger award, I think, tonight, up 5 positions. Aubrey Iyer finished P9, and Chris Schuessler was 10th. Then from there, it was Jack Stevenson in 11th, as Donald Green finished P12, Henry Rogers 13th, and Neil Urbesh was the last one on the lead lap, P14. Art Schwartz came home 15th position, delays a number of laps down because of his damage, and 16th. McDonald and Courtney were did not starts in this race. Well, Lorenzo, I'd say we got an entertaining one out there with the challenge class. How'd you feel about your first PCA race?
It was a really good race. I enjoyed it pretty much. It gave a little bit of what could have been, between like Karachai, Schultz, those Urbesh, and other drivers that were in that mix for the top 5, top 3. We could have seen maybe a closer battle, but of course, Zandvoort is a tricky track on its own for you to do the overtake, so we were taken away from that. But the strategies, I think, played out the way we wanted to, and we got a good fight on our hands, and we go on a track that it's completely different than what we just raced today.
Yeah, Mugello is going to be something, but we're not done with Zandvoort yet. Join us tomorrow night, March 7th, for the sport class here at Zandvoort. But a big thank you to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as our team tonight, Lorenzo and Ramiro. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard. We'll see.